I'll dive right into it. The first crisis that we dealt with in Kenya was around elections. In 2007, The Economist did not mince words when they wrote about it and said it was a civilian coup. At the time, I was in Eldoret, Kenya, which is a small town, and we really did not expect our country that had been relatively peaceful in the face of other East African countries, Somalia, Sudan, and even Uganda had had issues with war, but Kenya had been relatively peaceful for a really long time. So I was in Eldoret visiting my family and observing the elections, and things took a downturn on the 28th of December. On the 29th, things got even worse. But one of the biggest things that struck myself and the other co-founders of Ushahidi was that TV was a real-time fail for us. I turned on the TV, naturally when there's something happening in your country, you want to go to TV to get the most up-to-date information, but they were showing movies. I would step out the door and you would see houses burning. Now, I was very fortunate that I was not in a situation where I was personally in danger, but other people lost their lives. More than 1,500 people lost their lives. So we turned to each other. We turned to the internet. At the time, internet penetration in Kenya was about 8.2%, so pretty low. But with the connectivity that we had, we connected with others, and I connected with the other co-founders, Eric, who at the time was living in Orlando. He later wrote about this pothole theory, that you may not care about an atrocity that happens in the distance, but if something happens to those who are close to you and who are near you, that you will feel empathy. Or if somebody cut their finger right in front of you, that would hurt and you would really pay attention to it. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the thoughts that were running through our minds at that very early stage. So we created the first prototype called Ushahidi. Ushahidi is the Swahili word meaning witness or testimony. And this first prototype was basically, we wanted to use the internet as a way to update not only ourselves, but to update others, particularly in the diaspora, of what was happening in Kenya, because like I said, TV was a real-time fail for us. We also wanted for people not to start from scratch, because at that time, just to give you a bit of context, it was really difficult to get online and to post something on YouTube. It would take forever to load. At that time, it was extremely expensive also to get online. And that is why we designed Ushahidi to include input from very simple devices that can basically only send SMS, because that was what was available to me and some of my friends who were in remote areas of Kenya. So fast forward a few months later, we created an organization that we also called Ushahidi. And what we're trying to do is just the same way that we had a voice, even if we were using simple devices, we didn't want other people to start from scratch. So we created this platform, and it allows people to crowdsource information, bring it together, using whichever devices, to have that information geolocated into one hub, and you can have a situational awareness of what is going on. I'll give you a quick story about Haiti. In 2010, there was one of the worst earthquakes to hit that region. On January 12th, my colleague Patrick called one of the co-founders, David, and within 15 to 30 minutes, he had the platform set up. We invited others to join us to provide information, and we worked with several partners and a mobile service provider in Haiti who provided a short code number. The other thing we did was we set up situation rooms, and this was basically an effort to have volunteers around the world. Some of them were in Boston at the time. There's one story of a report that came in through the 3018 number that Digicel had provided. That report was saying that there was an orphanage that was out of water. There was also another report that said there were some kids trapped in rubble. The response teams were having a hard time finding the location. Anna Schultz, who was one of the volunteers in the Tufts Situation Room, was able to use Google Maps, actually, to just zoom in and quickly look for the keywords and to look for at least a latitude and longitude that goes as close as possible. It was 5 decimal places that was information that was relayed by a volunteer, mapped on the Ushahidi platform, and that feed provided to the response teams who were actually able to assist. And for the other example that I mentioned about water, there was a report about an orphanage running out of water, and someone responded on the Ushahidi platform and said, "We've gotten your report, help is on the way." And most recently in Japan, the OpenStreetMap team there was able to use the platform to crowdsource information about the Japanese earthquake, specifically evacuation centers, because it was a fast-moving situation. And algorithms are fantastic. I personally am a big fan of algorithms. I studied computer science. But when you have a fast-moving situation, the first people you reach out to are those who are close to you. The platform has also been used around election monitoring, because I think that first use case that we had in Kenya around elections has also inspired others to think of empowering people to have a voice and to say this is what's going on. And in cases where there's vote rigging or ballot boxes arrive without lids, people can say, look, it is my right to vote in a way that is meaningful, and somebody should not steal that right. And this was done most recently in Zambia, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And it's also been used for citizen journalism, tracking the issue of sexual harassment in Egypt and the oil spill crisis in Louisiana. There are many other examples of how the platform has been used around the world. We started in one country in Africa, and now the platform is used in 132 countries. During the Libya crisis, the United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reached out to Ushahidi and the Standby Task Force and asked us what could we do for that particular situation. So we set up the platform, and for a while there, the information would not go live. The UN OCHA was able to figure out which pieces of information should go live, because there was an issue of the privacy, and you do not want people to be targeted for reporting into the platform. So some of that information has to be validated before it shows up as a red dot on the map. During the Egyptian revolution, you had activists who were using Facebook to schedule, Twitter to coordinate, and YouTube to tell the world. Farid Bushra and his team are contextualizing that information by creating several maps. They happen to use the Ushahidi platform, and they actually translated the platform into Arabic way before this particular, the Egyptian spring happened. And they have maps for the civil resistance. They have maps for the constitutional amendment. Now, this is interesting to us because we're seeing people participating, but we're also seeing them contextualizing and grouping these major events. So you can say that they were using Facebook to schedule, Twitter to coordinate, YouTube to tell the world, and with Ushahidi, they're archiving and creating a narrative of what it means to have a revolution. And as they transition from a revolution into an actual democracy, the hope here that it can be a participatory democracy, that people can say, look, this is what's happening, this is not right, or hey, this is a really fantastic thing. But the future is really open. And we really hope that we see more deployments that have that channel for people to participate in whatever they would like to do, be it democracy or even placemaking, or even saying trash has not been collected. There's a problem in Napoli with trash not being collected, apparently. Another way that the so not just the platform, but there's this idea, this is 15 seconds of open street mapping that happened in Kibera. Kibera is known as one of the largest slums in Africa. And for a long time, it was just a hole in the map. If you went into Google Maps and you zoomed into the Kibera area, you wouldn't really have context of what that's about. In 15 days, OpenStreetMap Kenya were able to map the area, and they did it with the Kibera community, indicating where they have security issues, where they have water locations. So a picture is emerging of a very vibrant community, and it's making the simple narrative of Kibera as a slum and a very, a place that, that's really difficult to live in. It's complicating that by making it a place that is vibrant, that has people who live in it. And the hope here is, as they map locations of security where women, an area where it's very dangerous for women to pass there, that then they can provide that intelligence to that community, and the women can know that for this particular area there have been reports of rape, so please avoid that area. We're talking about real-time information, and we're also talking about really useful and hopefully life-saving information that is generated by the community and used by the community, because they're the ones who have the most to lose, yet they also have a lot of power. They can be empowered to inform each other and to make things better in their local context. We're also seeing this phenomenon of collaborative problem solving. So this is not just about data collection. It's not just about sending an SMS or using your Android phone and your iPhone to say this is the location of what's going on. We're seeing people here when there were the UK riots. The Guardian used the Ushahidi, the CrowdMap platform, to crowdsource information about that. But then there was also another CrowdMap that was gathering what people were doing to clean up the mess that was happening. In Russia, we had some activists who used the platform to connect people who were affected by the fires and those who wanted to assist. That is really inspiring to us. In Kenya, Kenya is one of the first African countries to join the open data movement. At Ushahidi, we want to make sense of what does it mean for a big announcement that now Kenya has joined open data. For you to find out about your child's school, but then you also want to find out about the teacher to student ratio of that particular school. So right now the information is very rudimentary, but the hope is that this can grow into another participatory way where parents can find out about contextual relevant information, and hopefully they can also have a channel to say something about that particular school. That, hey, I took my child there and they're doing better, they're doing worse, and you can have a loop of information. So in 2006, Time magazine named you as Person of the Year. When are we going to have we named as Person of the Year? Because technology has done a lot for us as individuals. There's iPod this, that. There are a lot of efficiencies that are presented by technology. But Robert Lane Greene wrote about this, and so what types of technology or collaborative tools are we building that help us explore what it means to be a community? And I'll just skip into the future a little bit. I'm running a bit late on time. And we are still inspired by the situation on the ground. This is a video I took in the morning, just about 3 weeks ago in Zambia. This is a polling station called Kanyama. There were elections going on at that time. We returned to that location a few hours later, and we first went to a police station and asked, can we still go to that polling station? Is everything okay? They said, yeah, sure, everything's fine, because I took that video in the morning and we turned back because we were afraid that the situation was very tense. There were reports of ballot boxes missing lids. And in the meantime, my colleagues were running Bantu Watch in another room, in another area of town, and they were collecting information via SMS. Now, we took the police person's word for it when he said it is okay to drive into Kanyama station. That was just a few hours later. But when we got there, we were surrounded by youth who asked to search the car. It was 2 minutes where I was frankly very, very afraid. I was with the observer team of Omce, and we remained calm, although I was freaking out. But if I did not have the context of what had happened earlier in the day, because when we returned, we were told that be careful if you go back to Kanyama, that the youth were very wary of people in cars coming into that area because of ballot boxes being found stuffed. So the future of real-time collaborative information, I'll just quickly go into that. When you search for radiation centers in Japan, just the same way I was in Kanyama and I wanted relevant contextual information, if I'd gotten a text alert that told me later in the day that the situation had changed, that be careful, do not go there, I think that's sort of the opportunity here, because if you search in Google, you get static search results. But then if you go to sensai.info, if you look for radiation clinics in Japan, you get contextualized view. And if that situation had changed, you can also have a view of later that day. So then you can make an informed decision about that. So with each crowd map that people create, they're not only bringing a community of people around the issue that they care about, but they're joining a network of networks that has so much more to offer, and really we're looking at the future of collaborative problem solving. And we're doing this, we're exploring this with CrowdMap and providing real-time Geo Search, where people can inform each other. And it doesn't always have to be crisis. It can be about anything, really. I came here to London and I found one of the volunteers here had set up a map to track the parties around when there was the royal wedding, and she mapped out locations of where you could have street parties. Hey, if it works for you, map it, be part of the community, create a community around it, and let's explore what this future of real-time can be if we all participate and be part of a problem-solving culture where we're collecting data about the situation now, how it is changing, and specifically what we can do. Thank you very much for your attention.